Hey, it's a friend Choice CJ here, and I'm coming to you guys with my Week 1 Team Builder for UBC Season 5. I'm very excited about this. UBC is going to be really awesome this season. As I mentioned in my draft analysis video, there's a lot of awesome competitors this season who are new. Our Week 1 opponent was actually a competitor in Season 4, and we've also shared a league with him before in PMC Season 2, and that is my buddy Jonah, aka Isolate, aka Gator Jonah, or whatever he's going by on YouTube these days. And he is the coach of the Great Lake Greninjas. And Jonah's a good buddy of mine. He and I do a lot of mock battles together, do a lot of prep together, and he's a really nice guy and always willing to lend a hand with anything. So I'm really excited to play him. He and I played last season in the UBC. Got a little lucky versus him. I think he it was a high jump kick that missed on my Mew that was able to open the door for victory to me. But it was a really close game. It was the only game that I brought Masquerain to all of last season, which was really funny. But as you can see, he's got a team of Mega Scizor, Garchomp, Skarmory, Serperior, Darmanitan, Donphan, Vaporeon, Thundurus T, Komala, Volbeat, and Wynot. I think that's how you say that. But let's just go ahead and hop right into the team here. We do have an Expert Belt Victini, V-Create, Volt Strike, Glaciate, U-Turn. Doesn't have very many V-Create switch-ins on his team. It's pretty much just Vaporeon, for which we have Volt Strike, and then also the Glaciate is there to hit the Garchomp. I think his most likely response is going to be Garchomp, but we're going to have to see how that goes. And then U-Turn, obviously, to pivot out if we need it. I'm going to have to be a little careful with U-Turn because I don't want to take too much damage from Rocky Helmet Garchomp, which could be bad. Enough speed for Darmanitan, most of it investment into attack and whatever's left over into special attack. But yeah, Victini is going to be really awesome. Most weeks I think I'm going to be bringing Victini because just teams don't have answers for it. It's just how it is. That's how Victini operates. And yeah, I didn't want to put Life Orb on this thing because I wanted as much longevity on it as possible. You know, I'm not going to be able to power up my V-Creates with this, but he doesn't have too many Pokemon that it would help with. Like, I can already nuke things like Scizor and Skarmory and like his other defensive Pokemon. Like, I guess Donphan would be nice to have a little bit extra power versus, but I've got other responses for Donphan. And so on and so forth. So, Victini, going to be a primary wall breaker this week. Next up, we do have a Rocky Helmet Lando, Stealth Rock, HP Fire, Earthquake, U-Turn. We put mostly, defense EVs here. Put a little bit of speed. This actually outspeeds max speed Donphan, so it's a little bit important. I am expecting Ice Shard, so maybe it's not that important, but just in case. And then the rest into the special attack. This should 2-hit KO most variants of Scizor with the HP Fire. And it also does a decent chunk of damage to Skarmory. And rocks are obviously very important. Mainly I want Landorus because I want to be able to switch it into Scizor as it's going for U-Turn and get some Rocky Helmet chip on it. That's the number one thing that I want. Because if I can whittle that thing down with Rocky Helmet, it'll be a whole lot easier to deal with. And rocks also makes that thing a whole lot easier to deal with. Scizor, even if you have fire moves, is so hard to OHKO. It's just so bulky. It's got like more EVs in defense and HP than not EVs, but it's got more base stats than Skarmory in the bulk stats, which is just disgusting. So Landorus is also going to be a pretty decent response to Garchomp, to Darmanitan, potentially Donphan, but again, Donphan could have the Ice Shard, which I'm going to be really weary of, so I might have to do some pivoting around to scout for that. Which is why I have my next Pokemon, which is Leonardo the Blastoise, Rapid Spin, Scald, Ice Beam, Toxic. This is going to be my other defensive switch-in to Mons like Donphan, to Mons like Darmanitan. Just because Landorus can't handle them all on its own, it's just way too pressured, especially since I am packing the Rocky Helmet and not something like Leftovers. But yeah, Blastoise is my other response to this Pokemon. I like to put a little bit of speed, just in case he decides to speed creep with his Scizor or something like that. Actually, I'm gonna put a little extra. Yeah, let's go. No, just 200. 200 feels good to me. because that's the same speed that I have my Goodra at, just in case he decides to try and speed creep Goodra as well. But yeah, Scald, Ice Beam, Toxic. Toxic's going to be really nice for something like Vaporeon that's not packing Heal Bell. Toxic is kind of my #1 way to deal with Vaporeon, so we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, Blastoise, like, it's also really important for getting rid of hazards for Victini and for Weavile, of course. So we won't talk too much more about this. I just need it to be a pivot. It doesn't have any recovery, which is a bummer, but that's the way it works with Mega Blastoise. Next up, we have a pretty cool set. We have Saltfisk Goodra, fully physical. Power Whip, Fire Punch, Dragon Tail, and Outrage. Power Whip and Fire Punch actually hits a lot of his team, and Power Whip from Adamant Goodra does over 50% of Vaporeon, so it should be an easy 2-hit KO, assuming that we can hit both times, of course. And because we're Assault Vest, it cannot do anything in return. Fire Punch is there to 2-hit KO Scizor. And then I could have put something like Ice Punch on to deal damage to something like Thundurus, which is kind of this Pokemon's job. But Outrage actually does more. I guess I could do like Ice Punch and Dragon Tail, or Ice Punch and Outrage, or something like that. But I kind of liked having the full power Outrage, just because he doesn't actually have that many great switch-ins to it. Like, he could go into Scizor or Skarmory, but I, again, have the Fire Punch for that. Skarmory, that's less true, versus, like, Fire Punch to Skarmory still only does, like, 33%, assuming that he's a Spadef variant. Which I think is likely, given the fact that I have Sylveon on my team. But yeah, I like going physical more than special this week, because of that Vaporeon. That's pretty much it. I should be able to hit his other Pokemon pretty hard with Outrage, like Serperior, which this thing is meant to check, and the Thundurus, like I mentioned. That was another, like, Outrage is nice instead of the Ice moves for those Pokemon, because it is stronger, and because the attack stat is just a little bit lower than the special attack. Having the higher base power move, I think, is pretty important. Next up, we have Electrode. Volt Switch, T-Bolt, Hidden Power Ice, Toxic. Pretty standard looking set. Just enough speed on this thing to outspeed a max speed Serperior. I could go more, but you know, if I'm trying to like speed creep a Scarfer, but there's not really anything to speed creep. The only thing is Darmanitan. I could potentially outspeed an Adamant Scarf Darmanitan, but if he's doing that, I don't think that's particularly likely. I think he's going to be a little bit more likely to run Jolly. So there's no point in trying to spend speedy Vs when I'm not going to outspeed anyway. And then the other thing I could have done was outspeed Volbeat, but I don't think Volbeat's going to come. If he does, then that's awesome. Good for him. But yeah, just basic coverage, like HP Ice is there to hit Donphan and Garchomp, obviously. Thunderbolt and should hit everything else pretty nicely. Toxic is actually really nice because it's going to allow me to hit the Donphan and the Garchomp on switch-in. I guess I could just go for HB Ice, but in case I don't want to predict, you know, and there's no way he's going to be going into something like Skarmory. Like, that's the only thing that's going to be immune to the Toxic besides, I guess, Scizor. But if I don't want to predict and I want to try and hit the Pokemon in front of me as well as an incoming ground type, I can go for Toxic, and that's pretty decent. But yeah, otherwise we're just Modest Nature. Modest Nature is really important on Electrode because it's not actually that strong, which is also why we're packing the Life Orb. Like, I was towing around with Magnet or Expert Belt or things like that, but Life Orb is just the best for giving it as much power as possible. And unlike Victini, this does not take the extra damage from rocks, so that's fine. And then last but not least, we have a Choice Banded Adamant Weavile. We've put enough speed on here to outspeed a Serperior that is speed creeping a Cobalion. And if he does bring Serperior, we should just be able to do nice damage to it with the Ice Shard. But if we get into a scenario late game where I can just start spamming knockoff, I wanted to have as much speed as possible while keeping the Adamant nature. I guess I might as well just go like this much. There's no point. Like, that one extra EV doesn't really do like anything into HP, so I might as well put it into speed. But yeah, he just does not have a good Weavile switch in, more or less, because he doesn't have a Dark Resist. His best answer actually is Scizor. Mega Scizor is like one of the best checks to Weavile in the game, so I guess he does have a switch into Weavile, but he still doesn't have a Dark Resist. Foul Play is actually a pretty nice tech here because it can do about 40% to Scizor, and that's pretty cheeky. So if we get the thing in range, like if we get it to like 50% HP or so between Stealth Rocks and Rocky Helmet and things like that, we can pretty freely go for Foul Play, knock out the Scizor, and then if we can pivot out, bring Weavile back in, like for free on a death or something, or on a U-turn. I think we can probably go for either Knockoff or Icicle Crash and end up cleaning up his team. But yeah, like Weavile's just so nice this week with Ice Shard. It can pick off like a Scarf Garchomp. It can pick off a Superior that is taking like 20 or 25% damage or so. If he's something cheeky like Rock Polish Donphan, this can go for Ice Shard versus that and try and pick it off. It can revenge Thundurus if it's got agility. It's just so good this week, and yeah, I don't know if this is going to be. I guess this is more of like a late game cleaner than a wall breaker necessarily, but it's just sort of my emergency button for any of those dangerous sweepers, like I had mentioned. So yeah, that's the team, and it's gonna be kind of a tricky matchup. Like I have to play really well around the Scizor and the Skarmory. The Vaporeon's also a big problem. Like that's kind of something I'm worried about in prep because I'm not bringing Serena. Like Serena would be a really sturdy switch in versus it, and it could hit it pretty hard with things like Trop Kick. But I didn't want to bring Serena. It just is fodder for like Scizor, and Skarmory comes in easily on it. Superior, Darmanitan, lots of things just come in really easily on it. And then I wasn't even going to bring Electrode, but Vaporeon's just too scary otherwise, especially if it's packing Heal Bell, because like I could Toxic it with Blastoise, but if he has Heal Bell, then it doesn't matter. He can just Wish, Protect, Heal Bell, Scald all day long. And that's also why I went Physical on Goodra, was just because I wanted to hit Vaporeon that much harder. So my default switch in is probably going to be Goodra, depending upon if he's brought depending on how many, like what combination of Superior plus Thundurus plus Vaporeon he brings. Like he could bring Thundy, but Thundy doesn't have the super great matchup versus me. Just because the coverage that it has, it can't hit Steelix plus Lando plus Goodra that hard. Yeah, so like definitely Scizor. I think definitely like Skarm has a pretty good chance to come. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see what he brings. Jonah likes to bring fun stuff, so no sense in trying to predict. But yeah, make sure you guys check out the battle. It will be going up tomorrow. I like what we're doing this season. Battles are going up on Fridays instead of on Sundays or Saturdays or whatever we were doing before. Just because it seems like there's always competition for games on Saturdays and Sundays. Not that I like draw in a ton of viewers, but you get my point. Yeah, so check out Jonah. Make sure you check out the battle tomorrow. Make sure you check back to my channel for other gaming and Pokemon content. And until the next time, I will see you guys later.